I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Joseph. I'm so excited to have you.
Likewise, Tanya. Thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be such a fun chat.
I think so. You have such an interesting story, and there's a bunch of stuff I want to get into, but tell us a little bit about sort of how you got here.
Oh my goodness. Fun journey. I mean, computer engineer by education, but I'm a terrible engineer. Don't let me actually build anything that's used by people. I'm lucky to have much better and smarter people around me. But that did get me into tech, and I've run a number of tech companies, so all software, B2B, and been fortunate enough to invest in a few companies as I've gone along. And now I'm using a lot of those lessons and those learnings to run Uvaro. We're a career success company, and we're helping folks transition from other industries when they feel like they're being left behind to get into tech. And so I get to see these transforming life experiences every single day, and it is such a great way to run the days.
Well, and that's so interesting because we're hearing more and more of that, right? Like people are, are wanting to trade. Tech industry is so big. We're watching it sort of just explode over the last couple of decades, depending on how old you are listening to this. I was here before Google, so I can say I watched, sort of that progression. One of the things that really interested me in the bio that everybody would have heard is that the majority of your investments are into women-led companies. And that was really interesting to me. So can you talk to us a little bit about sort of how that happened and why that is?
It's such a fun set of questions because when we talk about these things at work or with my peers or my co-founders, it's often very hard to point to one specific item because there's just so much behind it. I mean, being an engineer, I'm super logical. So, I'm going to run the numbers, I'm going to look at the research, I'm going to look at the data. And, on the one hand, there's all of the supporting research that women-led companies with diverse leadership, diverse workforces perform better. So, if I'm going to invest, I want to invest in companies that perform better.
Right.
So, there's like some basic brass tacks facts. But on the personal side, and the part that I think really made it a sense of almost doing something right or doing something good is I come from a family where my mother's always been very entrepreneurial, and I've seen what she's accomplished. And I have 2 sisters. And as I was building my companies and I was embarking on an entrepreneurial journey, one of the things I always wanted to do was to help give them opportunities. And seeing where they faced barriers, where they faced challenges that I didn't, was always really tough. And it struck me that there's this very weird dichotomy in the environment where people will acknowledge the facts. They'll say, hey, diversity and women-led companies will perform better. But then at the same time, they almost compromise that perspective by not making the decision. And it strikes me that you can't claim to be a logical investor, somebody who wants to do the right thing for equality, and not do that intentionally. It's like when people say people vote against their own self-interest. People are doing this all the time with the way they invest. And so I didn't want to be investing against my own self-interest or against the interest of my family, the people I surround myself with. And so, I make sure that the angel investing that I focus on women-led companies first and foremost. And then that extends into trying to emphasize various underrepresented communities. So it's a fun challenge, and it's a fun way to pick and choose a portfolio.
Yeah. Well, and I think, it's definitely refreshing to hear the action, like you had said, the action behind the words, because as a woman in business myself, There's a lot, when you had spoken of barriers, I remember those. And I remember even with my own brother, of trying to explain it and him going, I don't understand why you think it's so hard. It wasn't that hard. And I'm like, for you, it wasn't that hard for you. And I also started in business very young as well, which was, sort of, I was 19 when I opened up my first business. So that I had that onto it too, right? So you've got the youth behind it. And then, you also have the being a woman and trying to overcome those obstacles kinds of, so I'm glad to hear that it's getting better.
It's tough. I wish it was getting better faster.
Right.
I feel like I had this very, the only way to say it is privileged experience where I founded my first company while still in college. And I remember going to networking meetings, those BNI meetings, and trying to learn how to be an extrovert and, give my pitch. And I was that kid with the suit that's 3 sizes too large. And, I look back and I was like, well, those glasses were huge and that haircut was terrible. And it's like, so I look for those people now at networking events. I'm like, you feel really out of place here. Let's make it more welcoming. And I remember feeling those barriers as a young individual and how quickly I was able to overcome them. And then I see my sisters, my peers, my employees not having that same opportunity to overcome them. Like for me, I had to wait a couple of years and then I got through that. But so much of that the self-talk, the barriers, the assumptions. My sister studied archaeology and she got into not-for-profits and fundraising. And we're often talking about, hey, you should come into the tech industry because there's so much opportunity. And she speaks about this as well. Without me constantly pulling her into it, she wouldn't have had that kind of willingness to jump in on her own. And it's been an amazing experience for her and a huge benefit to me to get to work with her. But not everybody gets that combination of factors. And hopefully we can tip the scales a bit.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's true. If you put, just archaeology and tech together, they're two things that typically you wouldn't go, oh, that makes sense. That leap makes sense. And I think that, I wanted to have you on the show too, because I think this is, an exciting time for people because of everything that's been going on in the world. People are, almost more apt to sort of jump ship to completely change and move into something else. But there is always that fear of, am I doing this? Like, this is completely out of character for me. And, for myself personally, if anybody looks at, my portfolio of businesses that I've owned, they don't make sense together. And I never thought of them that way. They were, complete, I had, an accounting company, moved into a bread franchise. I owned a martial arts studio, like a craft store. Like they didn't make sense. There was no progression to them. I was just like, that looks like fun. But that's really hard for a lot of people, especially now when we're going into uncertain times. So how do you help people sort of figure that out? Because I'm sure a lot of the people that you have, it to them seems like quite a leap going into tech from their background.
And you hit kind of nail on the head in one regard when we spoke about my sister's experience. Hey, archaeology and tech, that doesn't necessarily make sense. And that short form of thinking is so prevalent in the business world. We always, all of us, we go to our pattern matching, like, hey, that tech entrepreneur, maybe it's a guy who studied computer engineering and, I benefit from looking and sounding like that. And so in many ways, it's easier for me to advance. But when you look at the tech industry, there are huge swaths of the workforce, sales, marketing, customer facing roles where there is no normal progression. So if you look at all the biggest tech companies and you talk to the sales team, those sales reps came from all over. Some were selling cars, some were volunteering overseas, some were pro football players, some never went to college, and everyone had these backgrounds. And what we spend a lot of time doing is helping people realize where their experience can actually be a superpower for the right kind of company. And I'll give you an example. It's easy to say this, but like a real actual example. One of our members, delightful individual, his name is Matt. He spent 8 years in hospitality, bartender, bar manager, restaurant manager, like working in a hotel, all in the same kind of company, but all in hospitality. COVID hits, he wants to make a change. He's thinking, how do I get into tech? He goes through our program, learning how to speak about his own value proposition and how to apply his skills in tech sales. But the real nugget is he's not just working at some random tech company. He is selling scheduling software now to restaurants and bars. He knows that buyer so well that he's just exceeding his quota. He's beating his colleagues, and he got promoted within 6 months. Like, just an amazing journey, because it was about finding that nugget. How does his experience apply? And the scary thing is that tech is everywhere, but the opportunity is tech is everywhere. So It's really easy, if you've got the right lens and the right tools, to figure out how your skills apply to that niche in the industry.
Well, and I love that, because one of the biggest things that, I myself talk and I use in my business is collaboration. And a lot of that is, what people call thinking outside the box, which is a term that I'm like, meh, it's not really thinking outside of the box. It's just connecting dots that aren't there, right? It's, going the opposite way on the connect the dots. Like, I don't have to do 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go 1, 5, 6. It'll all work out. It'll be a bear in the end. Come on, guys. Like, we can do this. And so I think that that's, such a valuable thing for people to sort of, shift their thinking, but that can be, like you had said, that can be a hard thing to do. So let's talk a little bit about Uvaro and what it is, what are some of the things that you offer? Why would people come and look for you?
For sure. So at the high level, we're a training program that helps people get into tech. What that looks like, though, is we're bringing in members who were in hospitality, tourism, travel, maybe selling in a different industry. We've had members who sold roofing and Harley Davidsons. They join one of our cohorts. So you're working with a group of people who have had similar journeys. Right now, we have a 12-week program that's part-time, a couple hours a day. And we're just in the process of launching a 4-week program. So maybe by this episode's live, we'll have that full-time offering live. That's exciting. But the big thing is, throughout that program, we're teaching a lot of the basics about how tech companies sell. So we're offering the language, the lingo, the technology, but more importantly, we're also helping folks with their positioning. What's their value proposition? What's their personal brand? And then we actually facilitate introductions. So we've got about 900 employers in our network, and we're helping you aim and target with your outreach. So we do all the basics. We crawl job boards, we match the profiles of those companies, we give you a hit list of companies that you can chat with, and we facilitate one-on-one introductions. And the part that's so powerful is that while, yes, some of our members have the ability to pay their fees right away, their membership, their tuition, we actually have an option that lets people defer any of their tuition until they land a job. So for most of our members, they don't actually pay any kind of tuition until they land a full-time job. And considering most of our members on average are more than doubling their income, it's such a huge win-win. We're helping build an industry and improve diversity in that industry. They're getting a chance to have success that's aligned, both on their side and the business side. And you get to be part of this really powerful community. And that part is such an amazing rush. That one's hard to quantify, but it's a very powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I'm really glad that you brought it up, because I think that's an important thing, because a lot of times people, they know there's something that needs to happen. There's a switch that needs to be made, but there's that fear base because you're living in a certain lifestyle, and, it's hard to kind of go, there's costs involved to switching anything or to starting something new. So this is sort of almost taking that away and giving that opportunity where that people get worried, I wouldn't be able to do that.
It's also really tough because, like you said, there's that risk. People have their monthly nut, they've got their commitments, they've got kids, they've got all of this. And I say this again, love in my heart, I'm a tech entrepreneur, so I've been there. A lot of the folks in the tech industry will say things like, well, you need to put in your time. You got to join us as a business development rep, that kind of junior level role.
Right.
And
Start
put
at
in
the bottom.
Time. Yeah. Learn the ropes. And the reality is that no, there is actually no requirement. The unspoken reality is these companies are moving so fast. Like, if you've seen this, I'm sure, Tanya, with your companies, if you're growing, you're doubling each year for 3 years, you barely have the time to catch a breath, let alone train someone. So it's not that you have to put in the time in their role, it's that they don't necessarily have the opportunity to train you. And so if you can do your groundwork, you can shortcut a lot of that, and you can go in and start at a more senior role, especially if you have experience with the buyers. Like that one member I mentioned came from selling roofing, selling construction supplies, very successful, has a family, didn't want to be starting right at the bottom rung again, took his time, found the right fit, landed a role north of $170,000, selling into the same buyer space, but in software. So just amazingly powerful, not the bottom rung role, because he was able to focus on that fit. And I love the fact that we get to play a small part in those journeys. It's a very empowering experience.
Yeah. And I think that that's, an important thing for people to hear, because, even in my own, I think, God, if I wanted to switch something, I don't know if I could start at the bottom. But that sounds so egotistical in my own head. But the reality is that I know boredom would set in, and, and then I just wouldn't be beneficial to anybody. So I think,
let's be honest too, you have so much experience and you have so much value that entry-level role is not respecting or acknowledging. And that's not really a fair thing to ask someone to do.
Right.
So it is totally fair to say that and to own that pride. So it's not egotistical. It's totally fair. Yeah. Own that. Yeah. You deserve that.
Thank you. So let's move a little bit into sales, because we had talked briefly about it, and sales is such a huge thing. People don't want to admit it, but I don't care what it is that you're doing, what kind of business that you're in sales. I think that everybody is in sales. So let's talk, because you have some top 3 practices for sales. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Totally. It's so interesting. First, that comment about sales, we hear the same thing every day, and your audience, your members, you probably hear the same thing. People come in and like, oh, sales is slimy, or I want to be pushing something. And got pictures of like Wolf of Wall Street or cliched car salespeople. And
yeah, I don't want to be that Tupperware lady that everybody runs from, right?
Oh,
no offense to Tupperware ladies. I love them.
But, cliches and stereotypes exist, and we can't ignore that. I think we'd be hurting ourselves if we ignored those. So we try to tackle them head on. The first one that we really emphasize, this is a really powerful and really subtle one. All modern selling is about finding that fit on the pain, not finding the fit on a customer. It's not about shoving a product into a buyer's hands. It's about looking for a pain point, and if you can solve that pain point, continue. Otherwise, stop. And this isn't a philosophical thing. Like, this is now my engineering CEO hat on. Everything today is a subscription. Your Hulu, your Netflix, your Peloton, your enterprise software, your bookkeeping, your Shopify, all of it is a subscription. If you run a subscription business, you care about customer retention more than just new sales. And so a sales rep who brings in a customer that sticks around is way more valuable than a sales rep who brings in 2-3 customers who quit the next day.
Right.
And if you jam that product into someone's hands and they don't need it, they're going to quit. So as a sales rep, you don't have to be shoving. You ought to be finding pains, real ones that you solve. And if you don't, move on to the next one, because you're wasting their time and yours. And that's a big one that people are surprised about. And in the subscription economy, it's so true.
Yeah. Yeah, that it is so true. And I love the way you worded that, because I think that really will hit home with a lot of people of thinking, yeah, it is. I do want people to come back. I don't want to have to keep looking for new people. I just want repeat.
That's it. And if you have a real problem that you solve, your customers stay with you. Like, right. It sounds really glib and really simple, but it's like, wow, as a sales rep, that's a great thing. I'm going to find problems and solve them. And that feels good.
Yeah.
The second thing that we often bring up, and that, again, kind of key nugget to success, so 2 out of 3, is bringing authenticity to it. And it's really funny, but people overlook the fact that if you have more experience, you have more ways to build an authentic connection. Like, Tanya, you had the great comment about you owned a martial arts school. One of our best sales rep, she's now one of our instructors, owned a karate school. She practices jujitsu, and the number of times that comes up in conversation, and I mean, she'll be on sales calls and she'll be talking about like, hey, no, don't worry, I'm not going to armbar you. We're just going to have an honest conversation. And it's bringing in that authentic connection, like, no, we're not going to have some kind of fake conversation about just the weather or, something banal. Like, actually, let's connect as people and know what you care about, share what I care about. That authenticity is so important. And folks sometimes miss that in sales. They think they have to be so buttoned up and so wrapped up. They never let that shine through. And that's been a really, really big challenge. The third one that we really, really emphasize, and now this is more about your actual sales techniques, but people forget about it, is you don't need to know product. You need to know the buyer. And everyone, especially in tech, and same thing, it's founders' faults, totally. They know the product really well. They assume everybody has to sell like them.
Right.
You don't need to know the product. You don't need to know all the features. You don't need to know all the edges. What you need to know is the person who's buying it. What are the problems that they're trying to solve? What are they experiencing day in and day out? And if you spend all of your time talking about their problems and understanding those, you'll move your sale forward. You spend all the time talking about your features, you're just going to wrap up. So yeah, the idea of be authentic, that idea of really, really know your product, and then really focus on the pain points. Focus on the pain points over the product. And then making sure you think about that long-term subscription. Those are the big things that we emphasize.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I think that, you're right. And a lot of the times that people, worry or spend so much time researching or trying to figure out how they can, talk about what it is that they offer instead of talking about why that is that they're offering and how powerful of a tool that is. Because we were even talking off air of, how I find that more people, when they hear a story, the message of that story sticks more than if someone just told them the moral of the story. It's the story that we all remember because that's sort of how, as human beings, that's sort of how we learn the best. So not to hide those away, not to, not share those.
Especially when those stories are honest enough that they include your failures or your challenges. A story of success is really good, but when you can actually be authentic and share, hey, how this did not go well, that's a really powerful one. So to share a good example of that, one of the things
I was just going to say, okay, so now.
Well, crap, I painted myself into that one. One of our earliest customers with again, this is a company a good decade ago. We were selling a software solution, and I brought on a customer where it wasn't a great fit. And I knew that, and I was chasing the deal. It was a big deal. It was a big opportunity, and we felt that we could solve the problems, but we knew that this customer wanted something that wasn't exactly what we had to offer. So there was going to be a lot of customization, and that happens in software. The challenge was that the requirements this customer had kept changing over time, and this customer didn't have the largest budget. So we were always bending over backwards to find a way to make it fit. And a lot of small businesses get stuck in that. The part that was so painful was that we had this customer for over a year, and we looked at the numbers at the end of the year and realized that in terms of cost and labor and timing, we'd lost almost $20,000 on this customer. And then we had to have the hardest conversation I'd had as a business owner to date, and that was actually breaking up with that customer. And those conversations are hard enough, but again, I'm really young. My suit's 3 sizes too big. And I'm talking to the team, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to break up with this customer. So this should be a smooth call, but if I don't call you guys back in about 15 minutes, can you call me? Like there's some kind of emergency or something, help me get out of it. How bad is this? I'm terrified of the conversation.
like a bad date, right? You're like, listen.
It is.
Yeah.
It's totally. Yeah.
Call me, get me out. Something's on fire. Something's happening. Yeah.
I look back at this, I'm like, Joseph, like, what the hell are you? But so I'm having the conversation. And of course he doesn't want to break up because he's trying to drive his business. And we've been making all of these pricing compromises, and he knows he can't get the same work for the same price somewhere. Time's dragging on. So I get this call. And I'm like, hey, I'm really sorry. There's an emergency. I'm waiting for some answer. I'm going to check. And I pick it up. And the team wants to convey that something's urgent. So they call and they're like, Lassie, come quick. Jimmy fell down the well. And in this middle of this terrifying moment, I'm trying frantically to not break out laughing because I'm trying to use this as a reason to get out of a difficult conversation. And I mean, all of this, I came back to the team like, okay, we got to figure out a different emergency code, a different mechanism. But the big takeaway was I shouldn't have sold that deal to begin with, because now I mean, I've got a great embarrassing anecdote, but I'm sure that wasn't a good experience for the customer. It might have been entertaining for the team, but we lost money on it too. So being authentic and genuine is good, but also making the right call on the way you sell customers.
Well, and I think, for a lot of people too, you get into that, especially when you're, in a startup mode, that you almost you can get to that stage where you start scrambling and you're like, I just need the income. I need somebody will make this work, not, sort of taking a step back and going, hang on, how much am I going to have to make this work to keep this money? Because I think, even when I think back, I have, those stories too, where I'm like, I've had people, I had one client that I had for over a decade that, I put myself into a situation where I just didn't feel like I don't know why, never felt like I could raise my rates. And it wasn't until like their sister had come back and had wanted to use, for the accounting company, had wanted to use the services. And then she was like, that price is like almost 3 times. And I'm like, I know, but I've never raised your rates. And she's like, why? And I was like, oh my God, like here I had put myself into this, I can't do it. She was my first client. She had been loyal to me. She had given me a chance being so young and blah, blah, blah. And I had made all these excuses. Meanwhile, she was like, what were you thinking? I'm like, that ends now, and I'm like, oh my God, she's still a client to this day. I have to say, she's been with me for over 20 years, but she is like, I want to know the going rate. That's what so, but you don't always find that in a client.
And it's so hard. That self-talk as an entrepreneur, as a founder, it is such a dangerous trap because we, day in and day out, we don't have someone who's just there that we can go to for advice on these silly, stupid details. There's people we can go to for broad strategy, executive coaching, recruiting, but some of those basics we just don't, and we tell ourselves we just can't do things. And it always breaks my heart because I hear entrepreneurs say things like, "Oh, no, we can't make a donation because my investors wouldn't like it if I use their money that way," or I can't hire this role because that would be spending money in the wrong way, and things like an executive assistant to take stuff off their plate, or hiring somebody more senior because they're worried that they're going to overpay for a role. And that self-talk can be so tough to overcome. So yeah, being honest with your peers, your coaches, your mentorship networks, super, super helpful.
Yeah. And I think it's important to realize that other people are in that situation. And I learned that quite quickly of going, if I would have just opened my mouth, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have lost, all of that money. And I've learned that now of going, no, this is my rate. I'm okay with it. I've come to terms with it. I need to stop, feeling like I'm, in a bargaining store and going, can I have $1? Who's got $2? Right. And almost making everything an auction. So, but it was a hard decade lesson that I didn't realize, of course, until someone else brought it up to me and going, didn't you do this with this person? And I'm like, we don't talk about that.
Are you like me at this? I find myself thinking, oh, hey, in this moment, I'm realizing I should have told Joseph from 10 years ago to do this differently. Like just that I imagine going back in time and telling myself, hey, don't do that or change this. Do you find the same thing at all?
Usually it's when I'll come across something like a project or notes or something, and I sort of see the train of thought that I had and kind of go, I would never do that today. Like I would never approach that situation that way, or I would never sometimes I was just cleaning up my computer and I found some old documents that I had sent out to staff. And I was going, I could never write a memo like I had. It's just not right. But what I was asking or what I had in my head of what I was expecting from everybody is completely unrealistic, but I didn't have the experience, right? To go, I can't ask people to do that. It was crazy. But to me, I find it's fun to watch that, to sort of realize that progression. And I find sometimes it helps me to go back and go, I have come a long way. I have come far. I have changed, because when you're living it, sometimes you don't realize that.
It's when you're living it, it's also really hard. As humans, we're really bad at measuring time in weeks and days. And I hear this all the time. People join our team and they're here for 2 months. Like, wow, I feel like I've been here for years. We've done so many things. And when I realized that as a team, we measure time by how many things we've done, it's easy to lose track of how short a window's been. Like, wow, we launched this product a year ago, or wow, we only signed on this client, 12 months ago. And so we always spend time as a team trying to reflect on, hey, this was the window of a time and everything that we accomplished. Otherwise, it's easy to get caught up in this feeling of like a never-ending grind. That perspective is a tough one to gain. And if you ever have any suggestions on how to accomplish it, I'd love to hear how to do that, because we obsess over it. It's so tough.
Yeah. What I started doing, and I don't even, it was someone else who told me it. I don't even remember is who, but we actually have a whiteboard that is up in our office. It's actually right above my desk. And every time somebody does something that they were like, that was awesome, like, I'm so proud of that, they write it down like right in the moment.
Nice.
Because one, we forget that was an accomplishment, but we go back to that when when anybody's having a tough day, like when someone's like, I've screwed up or this, we always go back, and some of them are hilarious because I'm fortunate to be surrounded by a team who has a good sense of humor. So like one of them was somebody brought in mini cakes one day. We were all like, it was a really tough time. We were all pushing hard, putting in lots of hours. And she came in with these tiny little cakes. I'll never forget it. And she was like, we are going to have our cake and eat it today. That is what we were going to do. So we all sat around, we paused everything. We all had our cake and we ate it too. And like, that's the first one that's on the board. We've already had our cake and we ate it too. Right. So there's like that mix of it. But to me, I found that, in the moment, it's really excited. In the moment, it's something that we celebrate, but it's so easy to forget those. So that board sort of helps us, not only to be able to go back, but sometimes to just put a little perspective on it when you're sitting there and going like, I haven't done anything. And then you look and you go, well, I had my cake.
I like the idea of the really big visual reminder. That's a good one. Our last company, the previous company that we ran, was in the HR technology space. And that idea of recognizing the wins was such an integral part to why we founded the company. The very first feature we built was an engine for capturing recognition. And the parts that were so neat about it were, every time you gave a piece of recognition, you could check the boxes of which of your company values was being demonstrated in that moment. So if you valued customer success or, winning, or even like do the right thing, you could capture it. And then every time a performance review was triggered in the system, it would pull those in automatically. So the first thing managers saw was all the great spots. And it was super cool because it gave us a great way during our monthly meetings, during our quarterly meetings, or performance reviews to pull them up really easily. And when we were hiring, it gave us this amazing, powerful database for how we lived and breathed our values every day. Really cool. And now that forms the kernel of the HR platform inside NetSuite's platform. So a lot of fun success, but the idea of just having it up as a big visual reminder all the time, if we'd figured out a way to get that up on a big screen like that, that might have helped me manage the times and the flow of time a little bit better. So I'm gonna tuck that one away. Thank you, Tanya.
No problem. And I think that that's important, for all the listeners that are out there that have employees, is that, we often do get stuck in, the write-ups when something goes wrong. And I love when you see those businesses that, have other things. I actually have one client that I work with that is a restaurant. And one of the things that they do is that you did good. And so it's a write-up. And so it's funny to see, someone will go, hey, you're getting written up for that. And, customers are like, what happened? And then they're like, oh, yay, thank you. Like they get really excited. But that's a big thing to them is we want to write up all of the good stuff that you did. So, they're more apt to take that criticism if it does need to come up. But it's empowering when you have, somebody go, hey, you did really good. And we're going to mark that down. Like, this is going in the record that you're awesome, that you were awesome this day.
It was, I think, one of the most powerful examples I've seen of that, like really institutionalizing it, was one of our clients at the time. They gave 2 days a year that they called kudos days. And what they would actually do was, it was like, hey, in the morning, want everybody to take a moment to sit and think about everybody who's helped you out over the last 6 months and take the time to recognize them. And they'd actually put it into the system, so it was logged. But then what they do is they'd ask everyone to print them out and then walk them around like Valentines. It's like they're going out and handing off these full page printouts. They use so much. On the one hand, it's like, oh, that's so much paper. On the other hand, I visited their office about a week after one of those days, and it was ridiculous because people's offices, their cubicles, their walls were just covered with all of these huge like thumbs up posters. And it was really cool when you'd see people walk into their office and you could see them do this visual view of what everyone appreciated in their work. And you could just feel the vibe in the office was so, kind of palpably positive. It was really nice.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's true. Like, I have, it's so fun. I'm going to grab it. This is going to sound really weird but it'll make sense if you watch the YouTube. But I have my assistant who knows I love The Office actually went out and got me this little Dundee Award. It's a pack of mints. Like she was like, I don't know, I just found it. But she was like, I think you need to have Boss of the Year award. And so she gave me like this Dundee Award. Well, now everybody wants it. Like it's always stolen and stuff like that. But it's so funny that, when I sat there and I said, the funny thing is I know you just did it she did it on a whim. She just thought she thought it was really funny. But it's so meaningful to me. It meant, more than any other accolades I've gotten, any other awards that I've gotten. That's I don't have anything else put up on my wall, but I do have that one little, mint case, which isn't opened. It's, it's pristine condition. But it is
mint condition. You could say.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God. I love that. It's mint condition. Yes. Stealing that. But it's funny how, it's sometimes it is just the smallest thing that absolutely means the most. And especially as an owner, I mean, often we don't take the time to sit back and pat ourselves on the back. So it's nice when you get that from someone else. So
it is. I feel like we're sitting here on a podcast for entrepreneurs, telling everybody to congratulate ourselves and each other. And watch, we'll get a bunch of emails of people saying, it was a good episode and really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I'll take those.
I know.
Okay with taking those. But I think it's important for them, to do it for yourself too. And that's kind of how, when we were talking about the board, that's kind of how that started. Was we really wanted to be able to have a visual that was up that you would walk by, and just have it ever changing and ever evolving, because I think we all need that. We all need that reminder that you have come a long way, and that you do have a right to celebrate. And, as you had said before, be proud of where you are.
One of the interesting things that it reminds me of is that we often talk to our members who go on to sales roles. We remind them that their interactions with customers is this amazing superpower. They get to talk to so many people, make such a big difference. And what's often overlooked is that they've got a good chance to make people feel much better about their own work and their own accomplishment. And like we all know what it feels like when you get that compliment. When you're in a sales rep, you have the opportunity to have the same impact on a customer. Like, wow, you made this purchasing process really, really easy, or that you're making a really, really effective decision there, or wow, you managed some internal risk way better than I've seen other clients. Like dropping those comparables and those positives can have such a huge impact. So I think it applies not just to the owners and the executives and the CEOs, but also to the individual people throughout the company too.
Well, and I think people remember you. I mean, it is a way to remember you. I think no matter what you're doing in life, I was just thinking the other day, I saw this lady in the grocery store and she just had this really colorful dress. And I just said to her, I love your dress. Like it totally cheered me up today. And it was funny because, I was with my son and he had said, she looked really grumpy and she's been smiling the whole way. And I'm like, I stopped and I went, oh, you know what? Thank you, universe. Like good life lesson to remember that sometimes all a person need to turn their life around is just to someone to go, hey, I love what you did.
It's interesting. I think we generally as people, we underestimate the impact we have on others in positive ways or negative ways. And I try to spend a lot of time thinking about how even the way I carry myself, the decisions that we make, the way we communicate things impacts our team, impacts our families, the people around us, the strangers at the shop. It's a really good reminder because what we put out there has such a profound impact that we don't even see. And so it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So tell us a little bit how people can find you to learn more about you and anything that you have coming up. Now's your time for shameless plugs.
Totally. So you can always learn more about Uvaro, and that's if anybody was interested in learning how to sell better or get into tech, they can join. Or if you're looking to hire well-trained sales professionals, you can always reach out at Uvaro, UVARO.com. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm on most social media, like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all at Joseph Fung, one word. I think the one thing that I'd push that's really fun, we just launched a free intro course. We get a lot of people who say, hey, I don't know what it means to be in the tech space or what it's like. So we've got a free 2-hour class that's really an intro. It's a step into tech intro. We run them every week, and you can find them on our website. And literally, we've cherry picked the best content from our program and said, let's make this available for free. And it's a great way for people who want to just dip their toe in to see if it might be a fit for them, to get exposed to it. So yeah, always happy to invite people to that.
Oh, that's a great one. I might steal that idea for something else, but we'll make sure that we have all of the links to where people can find you on our blog post. And thank you so much for spending time with me. It's just been an absolute pleasure to learn some great tips from you, but also to, learn a little bit more about, even just changing the thought process of what else is out there and is available for you as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tanya. This was a blast.
Well, October is going to be the month of Josephs, let me tell you. Thank you so much to Joseph Fung for coming on the show and talking to us all about how to move into tech. So if you're sitting there and this is something that you thought, that's where the money is, or you just really want to make, a huge pivotal shift, I really do suggest that you check out his website, Uvaro. There's tons of free information and great things that you can take to see, is this the right move for you? Or is this something that could be right up your alley? So I highly, highly suggest that you go and check that out. You can also head to our website at foxtalksbusiness.ca, click on blogs. On the left-hand side of the page, you will see the episode and all of the ways that you can connect with him and his company. So don't forget to do that. Coming up this month, I'm really excited about our episodes, so I'm going to spill what they are right now to give you a little overview. So next week, October 12th, I have a solo episode that's coming out all about going home. And I talk about what it's like going home. I can't even tell you what all is going to be in the episode because as I'm recording this right now, it's September 27th, just to, sort of stretch behind the curtain. And I only leave on October 4th. So I don't even know exactly what this episode's going to be about, but I want to talk about what it was like going home and seeing everybody. And I'm going to give you some tips on how I handle business while I'm away for extended periods of time. Because anytime I get a chance to go home, I try to go as long as I can. On October 19th, like I said, it's the month of Joseph. So we have Joseph Wilkins, who is coming on the show. Now, I have been sort of cyber stalking Joseph for a while because I really love his work. But to be honest, I actually didn't know it was him that was doing the work. I just loved the work. And then we connected and then I was like, oh my God, I'm totally obsessed with all of your stuff. So to any of you out there, if you've ever seen the True Earth commercials, Joseph has a hand in all of that. And he talks to us about not only that venture, but how businesses can start putting some humor and some fun into their ads and which businesses that is right for. And I think you might be a little surprised about what his answer is. It was a really great interview and I'm so excited to share that with you. And then at the end of the month on October 26th, I'm going to talk to you about holidays in business, how you can celebrate and decorating and how that really helps you with connections. So you're going to want to stay tuned all month. We've got some really great guests, some really great episodes coming up. As always, if you have a moment, I would so appreciate if you could head wherever you like to listen to us and leave a review. It helps us to reach more people. I also love hearing from you and the topics that you want me to explore. So keep those DMs, PMs, and emails coming in because I do read and listen to them all and just love hearing your guys' 2 cents. So keep them coming in. So no matter what you're doing, making a huge shift, traveling, trying to find new ways to do ads, or getting ready for the holidays, make sure that you find time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?